Senado Federal, em parceria com o Superior Tribunal de Justiça, promoveu o evento Constituição, Meio Ambiente e Direitos Humanos. Um dos convidados está aqui no estúdio, o juiz supremo da Alta Corte da Tanzânia, Paul Kihwelo. Ele conversa conosco sobre Constituição e Meio Ambiente. Seja bem-vindo, Dr. Kihwelo. Nós gostaríamos de saber mais sobre o seu país, que é praticamente um desconhecido, que para nós sabemos que é um país da África com espécies exóticas, uma natureza deslumbrante. Sabemos que há também alguns problemas ambientais, mas queremos saber da Constituição do seu país e o que está sendo pensado em termos de meio ambiente na Constituição e direitos humanos.
Thank you very much. My country is Tanzania. It is located in the East Africa. It is one of the biggest countries in the East Africa. The size of Tanzania is equivalent to the size of Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi combined. So it's bigger than those the other East African community countries. In terms of biodiversity, Tanzania is very rich in terms of biodiversity. It's one of the richest biodiversity countries in the world. It has a lot of fauna and flora species. It has beautiful beaches because Tanzania forms Zanzibar, but it also a lot of tourist attractions. The second highest mountain in the world is in Kilimanjaro, is found in Tanzania. Again, of course, the Serengeti, whereby the biggest migration is taking place, is also found in Tanzania. So there are a lot of attractions. As you are saying, of course, there are also challenges as far as environmental degradation is concerned. Environmental destruction is at an alarming stage as we're talking now. Tanzania it has about 50 plus million people, and the current statistics shows that at least every single person is using about 1 cubic meter of the forest just for firewood or logging. And that, of course, translates to the destruction of the forest to the tune of 773,000 meters, of course, meters in a year. So that is, of course, is a serious challenge. In terms, of course, of what we are trying to do, the Constitution of our country does not provide guarantee to environmental protection. However, the court, in a number of times, it has been using certain provisions within the Constitution that protects right and the right to protection to life. Because we believe that without environment, without clean and healthy environment, there cannot be life. So that provision, which does not relate to environment, but rather protection to life, it is the provision that the court have been using in order to protect the environment. But however, there are laws which are very good that help to protect the environment in my country. And the government, to give more importance to environmental protection, it has a ministry. And that the ministry that is responsible for environmental protection is within the Vice President's office. So it has actually kept that higher in the Vice President's office because the government has given importance to the protection of the environment.
Qual a história da Constituição de Tanzânia ao longo desses últimos 40 ou 50 anos, do ponto de vista de regras ambientais?
Our constitution actually is almost, the first constitution was made in 1961, and then in 1962 there was a change of the constitution because we got independence in 1961. In 1962 we became a republic, and in 1977, that's when the two, Zanzibar and Tanganyika, became together, so we had the first union constitution in 1977. That constitution have not changed yet. But last year, there was a constitutional review process, and there's a draft constitution actually that is ready. It is just waiting actually to go for referendum. In that draft constitution, issues relating to environmental protection are included. So once actually the constitution goes to, once the referendum is done, and you're hoping that if the new constitution is adopted, then environmental protection will be part and parcel actually of the constitution, the new constitution. But as of now, of course, it is not part. It is only found in other pieces of legislation, in other laws that relate to environmental protection.
Eu li alguma coisa sobre os problemas com a mineração, os efeitos da mineração em Tanzânia. E também como vocês conseguem controlar os efeitos do turismo para que ele não seja um turismo ecológico predatório em Tanzânia.
Yeah, I must say that it is very true. There has been some challenges as far as mining is concerned, especially in some parts of the country, whereby these multinational mining companies have been alleged that in some cases actually they are leaking some waters which are toxic in nature and which tend actually to affect the people who are living along the mining areas. But these have been, of course, to some extent addressed because there is a council, that is the National Environmental Management Council, which is not only an advisory body to the government, but also, of course, it has some force. It can actually put some punitive measures, including penalties or paying money by those companies which are creating those problems. So there is a problem actually of some companies of course which creates. Although any investment must go through the environmental impact assessment. But in some cases, of course, we know there are some problems. They don't do very, very, very well. Again, actually, in the tourism sector, it's very true. At times, of course, because the number of tourists in some cases actually also tend to affect the ecological system. And these, of course, also have been addressed. There was a problem in the northern part. Actually, there was a need to construct, to build new modern hotels, which in some way, of course, these modern hotels tend to affect the ecological system because animals at times don't want the busy life. But these, of course, have been mitigated in some way because the government, of course, have been listening at times, of course, to these people who are, especially the activists in some cases, and of course also some organizations that deal with the wildlife and ecological need for protection of ecological system. But the challenges, they are just like in other countries. We face these challenges, but the government, through its own ministry, it's doing much to ensure that at least, of course, we protect the environment because actually the environment is everything. Somebody had said, actually, if you don't respect the environment, you don't respect your mother.
Vocês, em Tanzânia, têm problemas de êxodo rural? As populações da zona rural, as populações do campo, migram para as grandes cidades? Vocês têm esse tipo de problema lá? E como vocês pensam a solução, caso vocês tenham esse tipo de problema?
Yeah, that's a very serious problem like in other places. We have a lot of people actually migrating to the main cities. And the problem, those cities were built in the 1960s. They don't actually have the capacity to accommodate. So you find, of course, we have other problems like there are environmental pollution in the towns. There are issues relating to the sewage system. The drainage is not sufficient enough. And you have cases whereby people actually are building. Maybe they're building some places where the wet places or the places where sometimes for there are floods. So that is a serious problem. And the ministry responsible, of course, is getting a lot of problems actually in that respect. We are trying much to cope, but of course, as always, there are also challenges because our resources are not sufficient. We are, of course, still a developing country, but of course, all the same, the government is doing much to assist. And the other thing, of course, the government is trying to do is to make sure that at least you improve social services outside the city, so that it can be a pull factor for people, of course, to stay in those areas, not to come to town. But that is not very possible. It's not very easy because people find that actually the good life is found in the big cities.
Qual o percentual de pessoas que moram na zona urbana e nas regiões rurais?
The percentage of people who live in the rural areas is 80%.
The rural?
Yes.
Na zona rural, 80%?
Yes, it's only 20% those who live in the urban. But of course, all the same, actually, those are concentrated. Even that 20%, it's much because the urban centers are not so many. For this, we're talking a country which is very vast. Tanzania is more than 9,045,000 square kilometers. So actually, but those who are living in the cities, although it's 20%, but it's also for too much for those cities which are very much concentrated.
De tudo que o senhor viu aqui durante esse evento aqui no Senado, a discussão sobre as constituições e meio ambiente e direitos humanos, o senhor poderia, qual foi a impressão que o senhor teve? É possível fazer uma constituição que fosse além das fronteiras dos países, pensar em linhas de conduta única para os vários países?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that have impressed me is all that is what's going on within the Caribbean and the Latin America. And the number, of course, initiatives that the countries are taking. But of course, I'm impressed with Brazil. We know for us, actually, Brazil is the mother when it comes to environmental protection. We know the 8th summit actually was held here in 1992. So for us actually being here and sharing experience on environmental related issues, I think it was a great thing that we've learned. And for us, of course, because I'm a judge and I'm coming from a training institution, my role is to train judges. So being part of the judicial training institution on environment, we are going to do much back home, not only in Tanzania, but also in Africa, to ensure that, of course, in support or in collaboration with the United Nations Environment, we come out with some curriculum and some strategies to train judicial officers on how best to interpret the law, constitutional law, environmental law, and human rights, so that because these are related. Human rights is all about environment, and development is all about constitution and human rights as well. So that is the most important thing that we've been able to learn. And the diversity, of course, of the Latin American and the Caribbean countries, and the things that they are doing. For us, it's something very important, of course, that we've learned. And of course, also, we have learned new ways on how best, of course, we can interpret the law so that the three human rights, constitution, and the environment can be linked together. And these are things that we are going to teach our fellow judges in Tanzania, and not only in Tanzania, but also across the African continent.
O senhor, então, é professor de juízes, o senhor ensina juízes, ensina lei, ensina, enfim, na prática. O senhor não acha importante também que seja feito, ou se já é feito lá na Tanzânia, algum esforço educacional no sentido de que as populações entendam a importância de preservar o meio ambiente? A educação ambiental já está dentro das escolas?
Yeah, I must say that environment is not taught as an independent subject at school, both at primary, at secondary. Of course, at the university level, we are teaching environment. And what happens, of course, and you are right, is that the fact, because if the general population does not know environment, the need to protect the environment, they need to protect for their rights, and not much is going to be done. And this is very true. The reason is that, of course, we don't have so much environmental disputes is the fact that, of course, also people are not so much aware. That's why, of course, there are those who don't even know how to assert their rights as far as the environmental rights are concerned. But currently, there's a subject which is known as the civic education, whereby the ordinary citizens, especially students, kids in the school, are taught on their civil rights. So environmental issues, of course, are partly covered in that subject, although not that much extensive. But I think, of course, the other thing that we need actually to focus on as a nation is also to educate the general public, so that the general public, of course, will know actually, first of all, the need to protect the environment, but also to claim where their rights have been infringed.
Aqui no Brasil, nós temos também populações extrativistas, elas estão praticamente diminuindo de tamanho. Na região amazônica, no interior de algumas outras regiões, no Nordeste, um pouco menos. Mas essas populações extrativistas, elas precisam, para que elas sobrevivam, elas precisam ter algum lucro econômico, de subsistência, para que não, consigam conviver com a preservação do meio ambiente. E isso é uma questão tem sido uma questão muito difícil aqui para nós. Isso ocorre também lá na Tanzânia?
Yes, we have the same problem. We also have indigenous communities in our country. The Hadzabe are found in Tanzania. These are hunters and gatherers. They live their life purely on hunting and gathering. They don't have actual connection with the modern life. So again, of course, with the climate change challenges, their life is changing because of course there are no, the environment is changing. There are no places anymore for them to hunt. But we also have a false problem actually with the problem also with the farmers, the pastoralists, like Maasai, because actually they are living on keeping cattle. So there are no more pastures. So there are a lot of conflict between the farmers and the pastoralists. These Maasai, because actually there are no more pastures, because the environment, climate change have damaged almost everything. So what the government is doing is trying actually to educate them. And some of them actually, they are even going to reserved areas like the national parks. There are so many conflicts actually between the government and those people who are living nearby the national park. They need more land so that they can keep their animals. But again, of course, we need actually to protect these protected areas. And there are several protected areas in Tanzania where we want to protect, especially the catchment area, the source of water. So the challenge, of course, is there, as you are saying, for these people who are living purely on hunting and gathering, like the Hadzabe. It's a challenge for them actually. Sometimes you tell them not to do that because they are used to it, and they have no alternative way of living. Especially for Maasai, it's a little bit different. The Maasai now are starting even cultivating. So they are cultivating, which they used not to do in the past. In the past, they only kept animals only. They are keeping cattle. They didn't catch it. But now they are changing it slowly. They start actually cultivating, doing some other things. They are doing also business in some other places. But the challenge, of course, is still there.
O senhor certamente já esteve em algumas situações profissionalmente que lhe tocaram e que lhe fizeram perguntar, será que cumprir o direito da lei é a mesma coisa que fazer justiça? Que se o senhor desse um depoimento pessoal sobre isso, da sua experiência profissional no seu país.
Let me say one thing. Of course, judging is a serious, it's something which is, of course, very noble, because we normally say the only person who has the right to judge is God. So the moment you assume yourself that you are doing something which is God is supposed to doing, so actually in most cases you make sure that for what you do, you believe that it is right. And I must say that actually as a judge, the most pleasing moment is when you finish reading judgment and the people are leaving and you are sure deep down in your heart that actually you think you've done what the law tells you to do. So that is the most impressive moment. You feel you are satisfied because you've done justice according to the law and not otherwise.
Thank you very much for your presence here.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I love Brazil. Yeah, it's a nice place.
Muito obrigado por sua presença aqui no nosso programa.
Obrigado.
Mande suas críticas e sugestões para nós. Ligue para Alô Senado 0800 61 2211 ou mande uma mensagem via WhatsApp 99966 1616. Para ver de novo ou baixar qualquer programa da TV Senado, acesse senado.leg.br/tv. Obrigado pela atenção e até o próximo Cidadania.